1. Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to our web conference today. This is Fast Track Dynamics 365 for Finance and Operations Tech Talk. Today's topic, GST and GTE Part 5, Extending GSTR Reports. My name is Janice and I'm going to be your moderator today. We are broadcasting this web conference through Teams live events and the audio can be heard through your PC speakers. Today's web conference is being recorded on behalf of the Microsoft Corporation. Participation in the meeting today does indicate your consent to being included in the meeting recording. Attendees may access the web conference recording via the same registration link that was used to attend today's live broadcast. If you have questions for the presenters or need support, you can turn on the Q&A panel by selecting the question mark icon located in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. We do have presenters standing by to respond to your questions throughout the session. Now, on to the presentation. Presenting for us today from Microsoft, we have Senior Software Engineering Lead, Susan Zheng. And supporting Susan on Q&A, we have Senior Program Manager, Prabhat Bhargava. And joining Prabhat is Senior Software Engineer, Maple Nan. So without any further delay, Susan, welcome and thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, Janice. So for today, like Janice just introduced, we are going to cover GSTR extension. So this will mainly focus on how to extend GSTR for your real business perspective if the configuration or the solution that Microsoft provided does not satisfy your requirement. So our today's agenda will be like this. So first of all, I will cover like how GSTR works and how to extend which part you need to extend. And then secondary, I will give examples that we have been received time to time from the market, and you will get and go through with you from in the environment from step by step. Okay. So first one, how GSTR report works. So or like from GTE perspective, how GTE and the GSTR, the whole solution works. So in the system, first of all, you will create transactions, for example, purchase order or sales order or general journal. And then you will provide the data of a purchase order, sales order, and the GL, and provide such data to the GT, and the GT will have to calculate and the posting, and then generate the posted transaction, which will mainly stay in text document row transaction and the text document extension _IN, and there are a bunch more text transaction related table. For example, we have a text document row transaction _IN. And basically, our GSTR report is built upon on this source data. So whenever you are finding issue or whenever you are getting trouble to see like information on the GSTR report, which is not matched to exactly what we expected, you can look into these tables, or you can also look into inquiry forms, which will build on these tables as well, which I'm going to show you later on the environment as well. Okay, and then once we have everything data in these in this set of tables, sorry, not only these two tables, but in this set of tables, in the system we have GSTR data provider, which is a set of class which will build the data in the format like a text GSTR report contract header and the text GSTR report contract line _IN, and then later on we'll fill into the GR model. So let me explain a little bit more about this GSTR report data provider. So we currently have two main GSTR report provider. One is a text GSTR report DP helper. So for this class, we have a bunch of performance improvement over there, and it's will be open to use from 10.0.3. So if you are doing extension, we will be recommend that you go to this part. While if you are still stay on the oldest version, then this will be the right class to dig further or to do extension. However, when you move to higher than this, you will need to move your customization from the older data provider to the new data provider. Okay. Then assume that we have already populated all the data to these two classes. So the header classes, which is very obvious, will hold the information of the GSTR report header information. And then it's a text GSTR report contract line, which holds the detailed transaction information, like tax amount, taxable value, item, and invoice number, invoice ID. So everything will be held in this line. And then once we have everything here, for our report, we actually have several configurations, which Prabhat showed 2 days ago in his session about GSTR report function already. I'm going to show a little bit more again. So to let you recap a little. Well, the working mechanism here is we will use these two classes to as the data to provide the data, and then through the model mapping. After model mapping being executed, all this data will be represented as GSTR data models, which we will see the detail from the GSTR data model configuration. Okay, and then all of the data of a GSTR data model will further be mapped to GSTR format through format mapping. And then next step, you click execute the GSTR report. Underneath, it will run in the format execution and will generate the GSTR report, as you can see now. So it's in zip file because we have several sheets in the in each of the reports. So currently, Microsoft supports 3 reports. One is GSTR1, and second one is GSTR2. Third one is government offline report. For the first one, for the first 2, you basically will connect to with the clear text, and then they will further to generate the reports which government required. For the last one, you can directly submit to the government portal. Okay. 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 Then let's go to the extension scenarios. So right now I just explain how the data flow between each steps, and when you need to do customization, usually you will do customization if a format required need to be changed, you will modify the format directory. If you need to provide a new data which currently not being provided in the data model, then you will be required to modify the data provider which been provided through this class or this class. And then you will required to do the model mapping and being required to do adding more field to the data model and the format mapping, and last modify the format and execute the configuration in the system. So let's go to the first example. This first example, it's kind of we want to support to only show the first 3 letters of HSN and SAC code in the GSTR report. So currently, for Microsoft provided configuration, we will provide the full set of HSN and SAC code While for some business requirement, you probably will only need the first several letters. So let's go to the system to see what you need to do to achieve this. So first of all, you will go to the ER workspace. So go to the ER workspace. You'll find electronic reporting. So when you need to run the report, you will need to import the configuration into the system firstly. I have already imported, but I want to show you again. So when you connect to the LCS for your box, you will see all of the configuration be shown here. And you will find those GSTR report configurations. Like I just mentioned, we have a GSTR report 1 and a GSTR report 2 and government offline tool. So you will focus to anyone that you need to run in the system and focus the version that you need to import and then click the import. It will help to import all the related configuration into the system and you will be able to run the configuration. Okay, same for GSTR1 and the GSTR2 report. Okay. Once you import the configuration into the system, you will be able to see the report here. Because I import more than that what Microsoft provided. So you see more configurations here. Okay. And then after you have all this report being imported, in order to run the report, next step, you need to go to the text setup. Modules, text setup. You'll find the setup, test configuration, and the text setup. So find the solution that's being used, and then click the configurations. Go to the report configurations. So click Edit to set the report controller for the format that you want to use. For example, for the GSTR report, you want to use the Microsoft one. You click Select, and then set up the report controller. Same for GSTR report 2 and GSTR report 2, GSTR report government offline tool, and you set each of them. After you've done all of this, you will be able to see this report when you are running the GSTR report. So you can see we don't click this one. So let's go to the report execution, see what we can see over there. Yeah. You'll see the report here. So you only will be able to see those reports that you set up on the text setup. Say like which one you want to use. If you don't set up over there, you will not be able to see the configurations over here. Okay. I'm gonna go into run this, and I'm going to jump to the sample that we need to run. We are running here. Okay, so let's go back to the electronic reporting workspace. So if you want to do any extension, the first thing that you need to do is you need to create a configuration provider. This is no different between when you need to create an extension text configuration or you need to create an extension reporting configuration. So let's create a new configuration provider. For example, it will be demo. Okay. Control so sorry, it should be tech.com. Okay. And then you will set it an active. Okay. Once you do that, you go to the reporting configuration. And our example is say that we want to keep only 3 letters of the HSN and SAC code. So since we have already have HSN code and SAC code in the data model, so we have already have this data. The only thing we need to do is modify the format of the GSTR report to provide 3 letters only instead of to provide the full stream of the HSN and the SAC code. Okay, so you will going to create an extension derived from Microsoft GSTR1 CSV configuration and then create. Short HSN, for example. Okay. And then the data model will be still the same as Microsoft provided because we don't need to change the model here. Okay. Then click OK. We open the designer. Go to the session that we need to change. So for our example, that change one of the sheet only. So you can do the same for other sheet. For example, let's take invoice and the bill of supply. Find the HSN and the SAC code. This, okay, we have here. So you click the mapping. Let's see. Currently, it will be mapped to the data model, PAM, HSN, and SAC code. Okay, let's click the edit formula. So it will replace this stream of, if there is a /n or /r or comma here, then will be replaced with empty. Okay, but if it's a normal stream, then it will keep as the same. So for each of the formula, you can easily to test what will be the result here. So for example, I just put here, let me make more sense one. Code and this 2, 3. So let's test it. So you will see this will be removed. Okay. And now our requirement is only keep 3. So you will find the functions here. We have function related to stream. So char, concat format. So for the detail of this one, you will be able to find from docs.microsoft.com about generic electronic reporting, which I will also paste the same in the PPT that you will get that later. Okay, so for us it will be not this one. Let me check my. Okay, left. Okay, so because we only keep the first 3 letters. Okay, if you want to keep other right, you can click the right. Okay, so we keep left 3 letters. So we just copy paste this left to here. Okay, and our letter will be 3. Okay, well, for our condition is a little bit different. We want to say, okay, this will be only keep 3 letters if our taxable amount is more than 800. Okay, so we are going to use more complicated logic here. So it will be if. Okay, add function. So if let's find the taxable amount. Okay, we have a tax value here. So at the data source, unfortunately, this is not in pretty good way here. It will be added in the last. So you put, okay, only when this more than 8, then the value. So if condition satisfied, it will be value of these 3 letters only. So as you can see here, we can also put replace this as at. So you can use both. Okay, and if it is not more than 3, then we will just keep as it was. So the full stream of the HSN code. Okay, once you finish the editing of this, you will save it. And then you see whether there's any error here or no error. And then before you make it to be executed, you can do the test firstly. So let's say our amount is 700. We have HSN like this, and let's see what will be the result. Okay, it will still keep this value. So let's put the same one but a different amount, which will be 1000. Okay. Okay, so you will only 3 letters will be kept here. Okay, means our formula is writing in the good manner and it is correct. So you just close the formula editor and then save the configuration, close the whole designer. So by the way, for the one that's I've been changed here is for the invoice and the bill of supply sheet only. So you will need to do change for other sheet in the same way as well. So if they are apply the same rule, if they apply different rule, you can write a different formula as whatever you need. Okay. And then you close the formula designer, change it to completed. Okay. Now let's go back to the text setup, which I have already opened here. Let's click configuration. So now you will be able to see what more configuration enable you to select. Okay, so let's click edit. Say, okay, I'm going to use, and the report controller should be GSTR report. Okay, and I'm save it. Okay, so now let's go and run the report. So in my system, I actually have already a text document being posted for AR side. So we are going to see the GSTR1 report will gonna be changed. So before run the report, let's see the posted text doc component transaction firstly. So this is the data that I have in the system. I have a free text invoice, and the HSN code is 04090000. Okay, so let me note it down. You will get, so we can refer to back later. Okay, now let's go to GSTR report executor and run it. Okay, so the transaction that I've been post is the day before yesterday. So I put this data, but you we can put any data that you want. For example, 13th for the whole month, and the registration number it's for this GSTR. I'm not going to show here. Assume that you already know how to check. Okay. And then you will select which configuration that you want to run. So we now have two GSTR1 configuration being enabled. One is Microsoft one, another is the one that you customize. So let's run both of them and see the difference. Okay, first of all, let's run Microsoft one. Okay, let's run it. I think there's some. Let me check here. Looks like I didn't set up some security on the Chrome. So let's run from IE. Okay. So yeah, Microsoft one. Execute it. Okay. Let me save this. Okay. Okay. So we can check the invoice and the bill of supply because this is the transaction that I have in the system. So the HSN code and the SAC code you've been seeing here is 409. 000, and basically the reason that you cannot see 0 here is because this Excel display issue. So we can open from the notepad. Okay, so here you go. We have HSN code, which is the full stream of the original one. Okay, now let's go back to the system and run the extended scenario, which only want to keep 3 letters. So I need to show you the posted document again, because to show, okay, because my transaction amount is 1,000, amount orange is 1,000, which is more than 800. So we will expect to see 3 letters only instead of the full stream. Okay, so let's go to run the report. Short HSN. Okay, run it. Oh, my fault. I should change the name, but this should be short HSN. Okay, so let's check it. Check that is again. Here you go. We have 040, which is 3 letters only. Okay. So that's it for this extension scenario. You will also see the brief steps that I'm going to put in the PPT and you will receive later. Okay. I'm going to leave you 30 seconds to go through these brief steps and trying to recap. That's what I just demoed. and how it's working. And then we can go to next scenario. If you have any question, you can ask in the question panel now. So our support can help to answer your question timely, so you can get refresh mind to see the question that you have. Okay, so now let's go to next scenario. Next scenario is a little bit complicated. So for this scenario, we are not only need to change the format, but we need to add more field to the data model, add more model mapping to support the full end-to-end data flow from the transaction to the GSTR report. So this is the scenario and the requirement that's being requested a lot from our market as well. So currently for Microsoft provided configuration, we will show the GST transaction ID, the number sequence on the report only, while customer would like to see the invoice number which generated by AX as well in the GSTR report. So now what do we need to do to support this? Again, I have a brief steps here, but we're going to go to the system and show how to make this happen. So at the beginning, we mentioned that we have several configurations. We have a GSTR report model. This is represent the data model. So data will be flow to this data model and through the model mapping. So basically you will see model mapping as well. So let me open the data model firstly so you can get some idea. So we have a report header, which will be mapped to the tax GSTR report contract header. Okay, and we have a report lines, which is mapped with this tax GSTR report contract line. Okay, and you will create all the attribute under these two role. So to say which information you want to provide it into the GSTR report. For example, on the GSTR report, we need to provide what will be the amount of assess. So we will create a assess amount field here, and the type of it will be a real type. Okay, and for the invoice ID, invoice number, let me show it here. So currently we already have this invoice number here, but this invoice number it's actually been mapped with the GST transaction ID in the system. Well, how can you check this? Let me guide you through here. From this data model, you don't know what's the data from. So this data, how to check the data from, you need to go to the data model mapping configuration. So data model mapping configuration will be here. So GSTR return model mapping. Okay, so let's open the designer, see how the field been mapped. Okay. Invoice number. Yeah, it is here. Okay, so it's mapped with this PAL invoice number. So it's, and what will be the node? You can see the parent node. This is the header model and the PAL text GSTR report line. So it's header model and the PAL text GSTR report line. So it's mapped with the PAL invoice number. Okay, this one. Okay, and then like I said, this is actually text GSTR report contract line. So you will check this in the system, how this data been provided. I think I have already opened here. So we go to the PAL invoice number. Okay, so we have here, and you will click see how it's being set. It's being set it here. Field data model. So it's filled from this table, text document extension underscore IN dot text trans ID. And this field is actually comes from the GST number sequence. Okay. Now what you want is to put the invoice ID to the report as well. So, but in the data model, we don't have such information. So you will go back to the designer, start from the data model to create the invoice ID in AX from the data model. So let me create a derived data model from Microsoft so you can get everything which being released from Microsoft. Okay. And then click the designer, underline. You will add the child of this active node. It will be an invoice ID in AX. So you can give whatever name that you want. Okay. So, but we can keep the same name, the same name convention that we have here. So make you more easy to identify as well. Okay. So, let me PAL invoice ID. Okay. Invoice ID in AX. Okay, just save it. Okay, now you are done for this data model, and you will complete it. So you can use this data model in the format and in the model mapping as well. So next step, you will need to create the model mapping, extend from Microsoft One as well. GST return model mapping invoice. Okay. Create. Okay, open the designer. 1 second. Sorry, I do something incorrectly. Okay, so basically I need to change my target model from Microsoft one to the one that I add the invoice ID, so I can do the mapping for it. Okay, right now I just forgot it. So let me delete this one to avoid confusion. Okay, then again click the designer and mapping that accordingly. So before we mapping this, we need to firstly to make sure this model have already been provided in the contract class. I mean this contract class. So usually the first thing you need to do is go back to the Visual Studio to check whether contract have this information been provided before you do the model mapping, or else you cannot find any source to map to your target model. So let's go back to the contract line. For the case that we mentioned here, we are lucky we already have this invoice line in the system, but we can assume it's not been there yet. Okay, so we can create from scratch. So basically you cannot modify Microsoft class, so you need to create an extension class which for the text GSTR report contract line, and then add the field that you needed. For example, invoice ID, okay, and then similar for other all classes. For example, we have invoice number. You will create a PAL method for this one. So PAL method, I'm copy paste from the Microsoft one. So change this here. It should be, I'm naming here to differentiate the one that already exists here. Here we have already have an invoice ID been defined but never been used. So invoice ID. Yeah, we have already defined but not being used. So we just from end to end, we just pretend we actually do not have this here. Okay, so you will define this. Okay, so now you have a PAL method, you have this invoice extension private member, but you need to really fill the value from the transaction. So for this invoice ID, actually, we have already posted to the text document row transaction, which you can see the same in the inquiry as well. Let's go to the inquiry. I can show to you. I think here. So see here, we have this invoice number, and the information here is invoice ID of text document row. So it's text document row transaction. From here, you will be able to see this field. Okay, so you can find any method from this contract. On this contract, it's split into several parts. We have a field like field credit debit note information for GSTR report, field cast vendor name, or field export import name, field from order. So you can pick anyone, but usually you will pick the one that it's really related. So I'm pick this one. Or this is the one that you can do extension. Another one do extension is you extend from the data provider class itself. So it's like for the older one, it will be text GSTR report DP extension, and you will write the post handler for this field model. So this fill the model lines. After this being executed, you fill the more information to here. Okay. For my demo here, I will put to this extension class directory instead of create a new extension class. Okay. Then we create for field from this order and set this. Okay. And it will from this invoice ID. Okay. So once we finish everything, we'll compile this. Okay. Must be private. So this compile will take several seconds to finish. So before it's build finished, I would like to recap what we just done for the previous steps. So we have finished to adding one more field to this GSTR data model, which is invoice ID in AX, and also in the data provider, we add one more field invoice ID in AX, and then provided the data to these contract classes. Okay, now we have information here and then we have information here, but we haven't linked these two parts together. So data actually cannot be flow from this box to this box. So once we finish the build, we will do this part and then we can proceed further for the remaining. Back. Oh, this really is slow. Okay, we're done here. So let's go here, refresh the browser. Let's refresh the browser of build so the metadata can be refreshed here. This is slower than I expected. Okay, we are back. Okay, so we'll go to change our model mapping that we just created. It's this one. So click the designer and then map to the invoice ID that we just added. Okay, it is here. PAM invoice ID, this one. Okay, so bind them together. So after this means the data provided to the contract class will be followed to this target data model. Then we'll save it. Again, complete the model mapping. Okay. Okay. So we get some request or some issue reported from customer or partners, say like when they have multiple data model during runtime, they are getting issues. As you can see here, for this data model, you can extend as many model mapping configuration as you want. So you probably have more than one model mapping for the same target data model. For example, for this GSTR return model with invoice ID, you have 2 or 3 model mappings for different purpose, just in case. If you really do have this, you just need to click the default for model mapping. It will pick the default one during execution, or else you are going to get an execution time issue. Okay. Now we have a data model change, we have a model mapping change. Next part, we need to change the configuration, format configuration to populate the invoice ID to the GSTR report. So similarly as the HSN code change, we create a new derived from the Microsoft one. See the GSTR one CSV invoice extension. Okay, and the data model that you're gonna pick will be your extended one instead of the Microsoft one, which does not have this invoice ID. Okay, and then you will select which version you want to use. Currently, you only have one version. Okay, and the model definition will be GSTR. Then click create the configuration. Now you will create the new model element to the one that you want to show. Let's say, for example, again, we want to change the invoice and the bill of supply, which to put one more column to show invoice number in AX and also show the value of the invoice number. So you basically means you need to change both the header and the lines. Okay, so let's go back to this system, open the session of invoice and the bill of supply. So change the header. This header of the sheet. Okay, so let me create new session here. Name will invoice number of AX. Okay, and the value, it will be shown as this as well on the UI. Okay, by default it will be at the end, but you probably want to do the easily to do the comparison with the GST transaction ID that we have. So you can use this move up and move down to adjust its position. So let's move up to the place that's next to the GST transaction ID, which is represented as invoice number here. Okay, move down. Okay. And now next, you have already done on the header. Next, what we need to do is add the same for line. So add one more element here. Again, it's a stream type to be invoice number. AX. So we don't put the value here because this is not the fixed value for the lines. It should be provided from the transaction instead of from like hard code, which will just use the column name. So you just click OK, and again that adjusts its position to the GST transaction ID. Okay, so we have this and this. Now next one you need to do is do the mapping to map the data from the data model that you just have done already, the model mapping as well. So the data will be flow from the data model to this format. Okay, so let's edit the formula. It should be invoice filter. This one. So add the data source here. Okay, and then save it. Okay, so we are done here. Okay, you are fine to have this replace or do not have this replace. This is just to remove those unused letters from the stream. Okay, now we can check. Okay, so now we are done here. We save this one. And before we use it, we need to complete it as usually. So now let's go back to the system to execute the transaction. So before that, you probably would like to memorize these two. The invoice number, it's INMF 00001000005. While the GST transaction ID we have already populated here is this number. Okay. You refresh because we just built the system. Okay. So let's go to setup to use the new format configuration that we just built. Configuration. Okay, report configuration. So we have this one that we just built. Okay, click select. And again, it is GSTR1 report controller. So we save it. Okay, and then go to the execution. Choose the invoice extension format that we want to execute. Okay, save it. Now let's check the result. Close the extra one. Well, now you see you have both two to be shown here. This is the GST transaction ID, which already been presented by Microsoft configuration. This is the one that we just extended which will show the invoice ID that's been posted for the AX system. So that's it for this scenario. Also, you can find this PPT with the detailed steps. Okay. And you can click the more to find more about the how to extend the GSTR report configuration. This is actually existing technology about generic electronic reporting that we utilized. So our GSTR report is built on electronic reporting, how to extension data model, how to extend model mapping, or how to extend the format configuration is exactly the same. You can also find the electronic reporting related tech talk to find more about report extension related information. So GSTR report is just one of the example. So from here, you can find the general information about how to extend a report. Yeah, so that's it for today's content. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Susan. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to take a brief moment here and bring your attention to a link that I posted in the Q&A panel. That's a link to a short survey for this web conference. We ask that you please take a moment before logging out to access it. We hope that you found today's information helpful, and if you enjoyed today's web conference, have feedback on how we can provide you with a better event, or you'd like to submit topics for future web conferences, this is your chance to let us know. We do appreciate the time you take to do this, and thank you for your support. And that is going to conclude today's web conference. The recording and a copy of the presentation deck will be available within 5 business days. Please look for an email from Learning Media that will include details on how to access them. I'd like to extend a big thank you to our presenter, Susan, and thank you, audience, for logging in and joining us today.